My name is Livia York. I'm 73 years old. I live on the beautiful Gold Coast, but it hasn't always been that way.
Clouds rolling in, block out the sun, feeling real low, nowhere to run. Wonder how long you can carry this weight. Destiny lies in the hands of fate.
Livia was born in Rome, in Italy in 1942, in the middle of World War II, among a lot of sadness, but Livia grew up to be a happy child. Livia had a wonderful mother. She was not just beautiful, but she was very intelligent, very exciting. She had a great sense of humor herself, and she was a great storyteller. She could tell me some fantastic stories, but her stories were not just, they weren't just fairy stories, they were stories of our family, our ancestors, and of course I was hungry to know about our ancestors. So I had a very happy childhood. Sure enough, she couldn't always have me with her. And so I've actually been raised by the nuns for 8 years of my life. I was with the nuns, and they were tremendous. I have nothing but good memories about the sisters that have raised me in two different boarding schools. And then Livia grew up. Livia grew up to a young woman, and that's when things changed. Unfortunately, my mother, with all her good intentions, she didn't realize that by leaving me in the care of others, not the nuns, others, it changed my life. It changed my life, and then finally, when I was able to rejoin her in Australia, I was the happiest person again, because for a while there I had lost the youth, I had lost the happiness that I'd known in childhood. During the war, I'm not supposed to be here, because in 1943, in one of the biggest bombardments in Rome, the apartment where my mother had on the 5th floor was actually sliced in two. And I was in the apartment with my nanny. And when my mother arrived, she saw the apartment block demolished, and she thought I was dead. And in actual fact, the fireman said, "Lady, is this yours?" And when she handed her the bundle, there was me and Giorgio, my little brother, not a brother, a milk brother, what we call a milk brother. There we were, all wrapped up in a blanket that the nanny had done up like country women do, country people do, tie up blankets. And there was us, the two of us. When she heard the sirens, the bombs were coming, and she ran down to the basement to hide in the basement. And the building was sliced in two, but we were in the basement and we were alive. So when Mum saw me, she said to me, "You were clean and fresh, as if your nanny had just been giving you a bath. And you were giggling, both of you, Giorgio and you, were giggling, and it was like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So yes, the phoenix was my mother, and the phoenix was me. Because it started when I was 15, when he raped me. He didn't. You haven't read my book, have you? When I was 15, no, I apologize. When I was 13, my mother was here in Australia already. She had been wanting to find a new way of life for us, and she really believed, truly believed, it was the best way for us. And I went to live with my uncle and auntie and my cousins in Sardinia. And the youngest of my cousins abused me when I was 15, 5 days before I was to leave for Australia. When I arrived in Australia, and of course I didn't tell anyone that night, because all I wanted to do was get away from there and come and join my mother in Australia. But when I arrived in Australia, much to my shock, I found, or I was told, I didn't know, I was told I was pregnant. Believing that I was doing the right thing, we sponsored my cousin into Australia, and because I wanted my child to have his father. And then when he arrived, he continued his mental and physical abuse of me. It's very hard to describe. He didn't really want to be married to me. He wanted to come to Australia. That's all he wanted. That's all. And then, of course, over the years, I didn't know, unbeknown to me, he was having affairs, and he would always belittle me, mentally and physically, and then the abuses got worse and worse and worse, because I was becoming more aware what the situation was, and I was becoming more assertive of myself. And that's when the physical abuse started. And then the night before I left him, the physical abuse was so violent that I actually found myself with a pair of scissors in my hand. I had been doing some sewing, and I was ready to use the scissors. And I told him. I held my scissors in my hand, and I told him, "Don't you dare come near me," or else. And I told him, "Get out of my life." And then the morning after I left, I felt that I was writing. I wanted to write my family story. That was my aim, because of stories that my mother had told me over the years. I mean, my grandparents that migrated to Algeria, where my mother was born, and then her young years. In Italy and all over Europe. She spoke 5 languages. She was a brilliant woman. And so I wanted to write all that lovely history, all that lovely. And as I started to write, I then found myself, in the story, I found myself back at the farm where my cousin was, okay? And the night that he abused me. And that's when I got to a point where I thought, no, I can't write these things anymore. I don't want to. But I thought, well, I will not be true to myself if I don't write about them. And so I went on, but it was very, very emotional. It cut me deep because I was crying without crying. My tears were just pouring off me while I was typing, and I felt that, yeah, my daughter was guiding my hand. My daughter had been the one that had said to me only a couple of weeks before she passed away. She said to me, "Mum, you're the one with words. Use them to honor our family." That's what she said 2 weeks before she died. And then she kept coming into my dreams and telling me to write this. And I'd say to her, "But I can't type. You know, I can't even spell." It's a story of triumph over abuse. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. Many times through my life or through my family's history, I've seen things happen, and while writing this book, and it is of triumph, yes, and of women that are caught in same situations. We need to reach them. We need to talk about it, all of us. We need to expose the cowards, because a person that is violent, whether it be a woman or a man, that is violent towards another, is a coward. And we need to expose that. And the fact that if we are able to talk about it, and if we are able to add our voices to others around the world, because this is a worldwide problem. It's not just ours. It belongs to the world. But if we talk about it loud enough, we will be able to help the situation. You can support me by spreading the word about my book. Women need to know that they're not alone, and by doing so, we will help them in their quest to free themselves of violence, most of all domestic violence. It is such an emotional subject that not everyone wants to talk about it, but we need to do that. So please support my book and make your pledge, and that way we will all be able to spread the word about domestic violence.
The phoenix will rise. The